Hey, trade pros and YouTube. Hope everyone's doing well. Good morning, afternoon, depending on when you guys are watching this. Welcome to our YouTube channel. And in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is trend trading versus counter trend trading. So I'm going to break this down into two different videos. And the reason for that is I want to cover what I think are two kind of different aspects in terms of trend trading and counter trend trading for one, stocks, slash options, and two, for indices in general and futures. So today I'm going to be talking about trend trading and counter trend trading for our friends in the options and stock world and how I like to break those down. And then we're going to do another video for the futures and indices people and how we can break those down as well. So if you guys are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and that like button for more great content like this. And remember to join our community.tradeproacademy.com, where you can get access to our free Discord where we drop a lot of gems like these. So today we managed to pick up the bottoms and the tops of the S&P 500 market on both the options and the futures side. And in our free room right here, we have a lot of great content. So today, from the weekend, we managed to break down Apple, low, and some other trades here. So you guys can see we offer a lot of free content there, and if you guys go ahead and check us out, you can get access to a lot of that stuff. So I hope you guys are excited and are ready for that community, and drop a comment down below. What do you think if you're already a part of it? Let us know as we get ready for this intro and jumping right into this. So in today's video, like I said, I'm going to be talking about trend trading versus counter trend trading for mainly stocks and options. So stocks and options, they do have the momentum behind them, right? So typically what we see in these moves is a strong burst in the first half an hour or so in the session, then we kind of decide what to do. So if there is momentum behind the name and there is a trend, then you can continuously find the trend and find that momentum push. Now, there is a point where you can find a capitulative state in the options and stock market, and that is the counter trend. So typically what I like to do is find the trend of a stock and see the potential for it to continue. Now, there is a way to identify how that potential can continue throughout the day, which we're going to be talking about today, or if you can find an area where you actually find a capitulative move, whether that's to the upside or downside. And here we have NVIDIA as our example. Now, we played this one main way today, and that's by noticing the actual continued move. Now, we could have easily played the counter trend move, but we were preoccupied doing that with the SPY and the other indices. So why don't we talk about the day trading aspect for the trend moves first? So we're going to be talking about trends, right? So the trend usually establishes in the first about 30 minutes of the day. So I typically like to look for markets that are actually holding up a nice pop, right, in the first 30 minutes and holding above some of the key areas, right? Higher highs and higher lows. Or lower lows and lower highs, depending on what the trend may be. Now, I typically like to find this in individual names in the first 30 minutes, and how we could do that is by navigating through these averages. So what I like to see is us above and holding some of these averages, so the 20-day moving average on a 5-minute chart, for example. So if we can hold that on pretty heavy volume, there is the potential for us to continue to the upside. Now, the key with this is finding closes. So as long as we close above these averages, right, the 20-day moving average, for example, as we come into it, then we have the ability to continue the trend. As long as we close above a key area on the 5-minute, we have the ability to continue said trend. Now, as we come into these areas, right, these pullback areas, we want to consider both the prior support resistance and the moving averages to help us out. Now, in this case, right, today, for example, here's NVIDIA. We had this trade in our live trading room today, and you can see how the day shapes up. So we get a nice push, right, and we get a pullback into the midday, right? So into the mid-morning day, sorry. And this pullback happens to come into this 20-day moving average or so, and it also comes into a nice volume profile shelf. So these are two areas where we can consider the momentum and consider the continued trade. Now, what I want to do is I want to watch how volume interacts at these areas, and we can see that the increase in buy volume at these levels is holding up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look to buy into this area to see if we can continue that trend move. Now we continue that trend move and we make a slightly higher high, which confirms that this is going to be a good potential mover, and all we do is take profits and trail some of the stops. Now, there is a period in the day where we see the European close, right? The European close, which is at 11 a.m. Eastern time, right, is typically a reversal hour. Now, when we watch a stock or options play, and what we see is the failure to reverse the current trend around this hour, right, around 11 a.m., 11:10, that means that there's actually strength in the original move, and we could see that actual continuation throughout the day, throughout the next few hours. Now, should this comply with the 11 a.m. European close and we don't really press into that above that area, we have the potential to see the actual turnaround and the counter trend move. So in this circumstance, right, traders would be looking at this and saying, okay, well, there's a prior resistance here. If we start failing and we start breaking new lows, this becomes the counter trend move that we're expecting throughout the day. So that's how we look to play that. Now, there are examples like Goldman Sachs here today that didn't really abide by that rule. So Goldman Sachs was a strong trend all day. We got Jay Powell was announced here in the morning. Banks got a nice push right off the open. We're holding the 20-day moving average, right? We come back up, nice trend, hold it out, and around that reversal hour, we get a new push, right? Pull back, hold it out, and we continue throughout the day until about the end of the day when the whole market got sold off. So this is an example of that trend, right? We want to identify what happens in and around that period where Europe closes. Are we going to get more push, right? Are we going to get a sell-off? Now, you can see right here after that point in period, we do have a potential counter trend trade move, right? Where you can see rotations and increased sell volume for the short-lived downside, which is a trade that some traders might try, but it doesn't mean that every time we see rotations, we try to hammer this lower, right? We want to make sure that there's prior resistance that comes in the way, whether it's an hourly, whether it's a 15-minute, whatever the trade is, whatever the level is, as long as there's some kind of resistance that comes out there, we want to anticipate that move. So it works to the downside as well. You can see what Roblox did today. So Roblox starts the trend and escapes to the downside. Or we pull back up, we're looking for the sell, right? We pull back up. Maybe we don't find the sell because of volume in these areas, or we can attempt it and it attempts to recover, but not so much. So you can find areas where you can find the counter trend trade. I typically like to find the counter trend trade with like two bounces and we start to see volume come in for the next leg up. But to continue with this trend trade first, we can look to trail this throughout the majority of the day if those criteria are met, right? As long as for the bulls, we see higher highs and higher lows, right? Higher highs, higher lows. We see volume that increases and we maintain closes above the 20 EMA on a 5-minute chart, right? So for the bear, we have the exact opposite, right? Lower lows and lower highs. We have volume that comes in and closes below that 20 EMA. So we want to make sure that the trend applies all of those rules and we can see that continuation. Now, another tip that we talked about is that in and around 11 a.m., we don't get the reversal of the trend based on the European close, right? We see that continuation. That confirms that, you know what, we're going to see some of that upside movement. Now, if we're talking about counter trend moves, right, we can find them based on the change in structure, prior support resistance areas failing, right, volume increasing to the counter trend, and so on. So right here we have Apple, right? So when we watch Apple and we see a very, very strong move in the majority of the day, right, and what we get is a pull down into the 20-day moving average. Now, this is an attempted area to seek those longs, right, to make a new high. But when you fail, right? When you fail at a key resistance point to make a new high and you get rejected with heavier volume, this is actually the potential for the counter trend move of the day, right? And you'll notice right around the European close and reversal hour, we get the slump and no attempted new high is being made. So when we get back into these areas and we fail like that, we're looking for the sell into the next area with the stops above so we can get that continued move to the downside. So we like to play it off of prior support resistance as well, based on like dailies, right? If you find a daily key support or resistance, it's very effective to find those counter trend moves. If we have an example with like Facebook, right? We come into Facebook, and the more rotations you have in an area, the better it is to find that counter trend top, right? Rather than waiting to see the confirmation into that 20 EMA, what I like to do is, okay, you have a prior top from the prior day somewhere around here. Now, it's not as easy as just saying, okay, well, I'm going to sell the first red candle that comes into this because this is the second candle of the day, right? When you pop back up, right, you want to notice, okay, this is some pretty heavy selling on the sell volume side. And notice if we got short right here, we might have gotten stopped out before we got the original dump. Now, if we wait for a few candles that actually rotate in and around these areas where we have this prior resistance, we can look for the sell with the stops, right? Like maybe a bit wider wherever they are, and look for that downside continuation because we failed that area time and time again on heavy, heavy volume. So what I like with this trade is we can play it from the top side or the downside, right? If you find these levels on an hourly basis, you'll find a little more confirmation and a little more confidence in these moves, right? So for example, here, right, this low and this low, they get bought up fairly quickly, right? We can find this low and this low, they try to get bought up pretty quickly. And then you can look at the same thing as highs. Now, that was a counter trend move, and the idea is you want to find a very key support or resistance, number one, and see if there's failure there on heavy volume. Number two, you are currently in a trend up or down, right, and it's a momentum play. What you want to do is see how the pullback reacts, and if you can make a new higher low, a new higher high or a new lower low, and if that doesn't happen, then you can look for the continued move back in the counter trend direction. So keep that in mind when counter trend trading and trend trading the individual stock names. So let me show you guys a really strong trending name today. Right, for the most part, we got a very, very solid move. Now, this didn't happen until about into the afternoon at some point. You guys can see, and that's okay because number one, we couldn't break the support on Palo Alto on Pan W here, but what we did is break through a very key resistance and the volume started to increase. Now, here's another one, right, Moderna. So Moderna, we have a very, very key resistance somewhere in and around this area. Now, we had a little sell in the morning, but we started to turn around and held the moving averages very well. And by the reversal hour, what we're seeing is we're actually getting strength in this name. So well through the resistance on heavy volume, we can use that now as a support structure, and it comes into consolidation with our 20 EMA, and back up we go into pretty much the remainder of the day. So it's a very good example of the trend trade. Now, we saw Facebook, that was a pretty solid example of the counter trend trade. Now, when you were trading this with options, right, we want to make sure that are we going weekly or are we going on a longer term? So that allows you to identify, is it a day trade or is it a swing trade? So if you guys wanted to learn more and more advanced techniques about this trend trading or counter trend trading, let us know. But this is a beginner introduction. I hope you guys learned a lot. And next time we're going to be talking about our friends in the futures and indices world. Now, keep in mind, one more tip. As we come into this, we don't want to bring volume profile too much without getting you guys too excited. But if you look at a volume profile ledge, you can find where those key support and resistances may be, right? Where you can look for that counter trend move or where you can look for that continued move, right? So now that we're coming up back into this resistance, you can see what the volume profile ledge looks like, right at 350. Now, if that comes up on Moderna, watch for a potential failure through that area. If we get a failure through that level, we can day trade it potentially, but if we get a break above, the target's going to be in these 380s, 390s. So just keep that in mind. We'll talk more about that in the next lesson plan. If you guys want to learn more about these counter trends versus trends, just let us know in the comments down below. And remember, community.tradeproacademy.com, you can find us in Discord there. We got that free Discord, and I hope to see everyone there. Thank you all for watching, and chat soon.